Okay, hi everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining me for another Knitting 101 class. My name is Ti and I'm your instructor. Again, thank you to Better Spaces for hosting this class for you guys. I'd like to first off saying I'm here to help you. So if I'm doing anything and you need me to pause or redo anything, feel free to leave that down in the chat. I am going to be placing like a few links for you guys to reference in there. So make sure you're checking for that as well. But we are going to jump into today's class, which is going to be making something out of the skills that we already did, which is learning how to cast on, learning the knit stitch, the purl stitch, and then using combination of those to do the stockinette stitch and the garter stitch. So with this pattern, it's kind of free reign as to what you'd like to do, but I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of instructions so that you know kind of where to start or just some tips on choosing the correct project for you. So first and foremost, we've been working with the Knit and Quick super bulky weight yarn. I like this yarn because it's fast, so you'll be able to complete your project a lot quicker, and you're able to see your work a lot better as well. Um, so first and foremost, I have brought three circular needles here. So I have the 8 millimeter needle. I also have the 6.5 millimeter. And then I think this one is the 10 or 9. Yeah, this is the 10 millimeter circular needle. This is the brand that I highly recommend if you're moving up to the metal needle. This is Chigo needles, and they are amazing. Like I say, they also come in the interchangeable version where you don't have to have them, you know, all over the place. They would literally just stay in the pack, just like this, and you'll have the different sizes that you could then put on the cable. And the only thing with the larger needles that they sell in this interchangeable pack is that it only goes up to 8 millimeter. So if you do want the larger needles and the interchangeable set, you'd have to get that separately. So first off, let's start off. I'm going to be using the 10 millimeter, and then I'm going to actually switch my needle here and there. So I'm going to start off by casting on some stitches. So I'm going to do, let's say, let's see how much I could get with this amount of tail. This is the long tail cast on that I'm doing. I'm doing it a little bit faster this time because we've gone through it. I was supposed to put up the video for last week's class, but it was sent during the Thanksgiving break and it was just so chaotic. So I didn't get to, but I'm going to try to get that up today for you guys so that you could reference this cast on once again. So I have here 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15, 16, 18, 19. Let's do one more to make 20. Okay, so I have here 20 stitches cast on my 10 millimeter needle. I'm going to go in and do the knit stitch. So that means on the side that is purled, and you could see the purl side based on this bump. 1 second. You could see the purl side based on these bumps, and the knit side, well, you'll see it in a second, but the purl side always has this bump before you do anything. So on the purl side, I am going to purl to the end of the stitches that I have on my needle. And the reason why I am starting out with this is because I want to show you guys that you can use different needle sizes, even though when you look on the yarn label, it would recommend, I know for this super bulky weight yarn, they do recommend the 9 millimeter needle. but you can use whatever yarn size you want. And not yarn size, sorry, needle size that you want. And the reason being is the fun part about knitting or crocheting is that you're essentially creating your own fabric. So you're going to get different results based on the needle size that you use. So here is a view of what the knit stitches look like. It's that nice V in front, and the back still has the bumps for the pearl. So I'm going to do another row. This time I'm knitting where the working yarn is at the back, and I'm inserting my needles from the front through the back of the stitch and then taking it off my needle. I'm going, maybe I should have done little less stitches. Um, but I want to show you the difference in fabric before we get into kind of like a guide on creating your own. So for this class, we're either going to be doing a coaster, a air warmer, or a scarf. Um, each one going down is a little bit more challenging, mainly because the scarf is going to take a lot more time than a coaster. The air warmer is going to take a little bit more time than a coaster as well. So it all depends on what you have the energy to put in. So let me just finish this row and then I'll show you guys the fabric that we are creating. So right now I am doing just the stockinette stitch, which means that I am knitting on the rows that I see knit stitches and I'm purling on the rows that I see purl stitches. So this is the stockinette stitch. Let me get a little bit closer, you guys. Oops. Make sure it's nice and clear. Okay, so this is the stockinette stitch. Nice knits on the knit sides, pearls on the purl side, right? And even though we're doing the stockinette stitch and the garter stitch kind of looks like this, you can decide to just use this side as the right side of your work instead of using the knit side as the right side of your work. So it all depends on what you're going for. So here on the knit side, you can see how these stitches are kind of loose, like you're able to see through it a bit. I don't know if you could see here, but you're able to see the background that I have my work up against. Versus, let's say, for example, I decided to use let's go down to the 6.5 millimeter needle. So I'm going to transition over. Let me get this one out the way. It's going to be a lot of banging with metal needles. But I'm going to show you that you can still use a smaller needle. The transition is going to be a little wonky from the 10 to the 6. Still going to be a little big. It's not going to grip the needle as much. But once I finish this row, you'll be able to see that you're not going to be able to see the background as much as you did when we use the 10 millimeters. So I'm going back here with the purl stitch, and this is when the working yarn is to the front of the needle, and you enter the stitch from the front and then yarn over in the front as well. Okay, So we just did one row. We just transferred our work from the 10 mm needle to the 6.5 mm. And you could just see here, even without going any further with my rows, that the 6.5 is a lot tighter. So right up here is the 6.5 versus the 10. So I wanted to do that to demonstrate to you guys that it all depends on what you're trying to achieve. Maybe for a coaster, even though we're using the thick and quick yarn, and let's say, for example, you have a smaller needle, you could go ahead and use that for a coaster because usually you want that to be a little bit more tighter. Whereas a scarf, maybe you want it to be a little jumbier. What is that word? A little bit more jumbo and loose. So that would be good for the 10 mm needle. So after, I would say, whenever you're starting your project to just cast on a few stitches, I would say go with about maybe 20, like I have here. And then what you're going to do is figure out what the size of the air warmer. So for example, if you're using the air warmer, you want to figure out like how thick. Usually what I try to make sure I do whenever I make hats or ear warmers, my thing is I try to get that ear cover. Like that's the whole point. You want to keep the ears warm. So I try to get that. If you are making it for somebody else, you can maybe just ask them to give like a quick measurement of their ears so that you make it so that it covers their ears and it's not too short. For the scarf, I also like to make it a lot bigger and chunkier, but it all depends on the person. Sometimes people just want a nice skinny scarf. And for the coasters are usually about maybe 2.5, 3 inches wide. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do with that information. So once we figure out the size that we want, we go in here. They give you a little ruler in here, which is nice. I can't find my ruler for some reason. Okay, so when you cast on your stitches and you decide what needle you want to use, hold on one second, and you decide what needle that you want to use, go ahead and knit about, let's say, maybe 6 rows with that needle with the yarn that you're using, right? Once you get those rows, you're then going to put maybe a tape measure or a ruler against the fabric, and you're going to count. Let's say, for example, let me see if I can get a little closer. All right, let's say, for example, we want to make a ear warmer, and let me quickly measure. So my ears are about 2 inches and change, right? But I like to give a little bit more space. So maybe 3 inches, right? So if you're not sure how much to cast on, you're going to take this ruler or whatever you're using to measure, and you're going to find the amount of stitches that fits in between that measurement. So if we're using the 3 inches as a marker, the 3 inches are right here. We're going to count how many stitches do we have between that. So for me, I have 2, 4, 6, 7 stitches. So that is a good way to quickly figure out how many you need to cast on. That way, instead of, guessing and then finishing the work and it not fitting, you could instead take a little bit of time, and this is called a swatch. This is not a proper swatch because it's usually a 4x4 area, but just to make something quick so that you could figure out how much you need to do, just go ahead, cast on between 10 and 20 stitches based on, what you're trying to make. And then take the ruler, figure out the measurement that you are trying to make for that item, and go ahead and count the number of knit stitches. I would say whenever you're making this swatch, try to do it in stockinette stitch. The reason being is if we turn over this project here and we try to kind of figure out how many for the, I think it's a little blurry. Sorry, guys. Okay. So if we're trying to figure out how many stitches for the ear warmer that's 3 inches, doing the purl side or doing if we did garter stitch, which is knitting all the sides, it kind of looks like this, right? And this is a lot harder to figure out how many stitches actually count for the inches that you want, right? So try to do a swatch of stockinette stitch where it's clear and easy to tell that this is one, this is two, this is three, this is four, and so on. When you're doing a swatch, because this fabric is also washable, you will experience maybe a little bit of a stretch within the fabric. So you can account for that by maybe subtracting one stitch, or you could actually take that swatch that you made and then go ahead and wash it, and then you'll be able to get the final amount of stitches that you need for the project. So those are two different ways to see. We are going to do a ear warmer together. So we did, how many stitches did we do? 7? And we're going to take away 1. So we're going to do 6 stitches. So we're going to cast on for 6. Usually for 6, you don't need that much of a tail. So I'm going to do maybe a 8-inch tail, and that should be enough for me to cast on and have 6 stitches on my needle. So 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember, you still need a tail to weave in at the end of your project. And we're using the 10mm needle. So here, after we cast on, this is when we could decide if we want to keep doing the stockinette stitch, which means for the purl round, you purl, for the knit side, you knit, or if you prefer not to even get into purling, like I say, you could knit all the stitches and create the garter stitch by doing that. The end stitch can be a little wonky. There's 2 things that you could do with the end stitch to prevent like a wonkiness. You kind of want to pull it beforehand so that it tightens up. So it's a little smaller than the other ones. You just continue to knit. If you are doing the stockinette stitch for your project and you want a nice neat end, for the stockinette stitch at the end of every row, even though it may be a purl side, you're going to knit that first stitch, and that will give you a nice, more neat end of your work. But we're doing the garter stitch, so we're knitting anyways, so that will take care of that for us. So once you are finished with your work, there's some things that you can do to just make it look a little bit more professional, I would say, or just neater and nicer. And we'll go through that in the next class or the following class. In the meantime, if you guys have any questions or want me to go over anything, you could put that in the chat section for me. Meantime, I'm going to add some links for you guys. I always recommend you going to the Yarn Council, and I'm adding a specific link, which is for like the head circumference. So if you're doing a ear warmer and you also not only want to figure out how long you want your ear warmer to be, but also how wide it needs to be, that is a good resource to do that. Um, and then I'll also share with you the playlist for the classes. This is where I place all the videos that we do in the class so that if you need to refer back to something, you could go and look at that video. And this will be the next class coming up. If you want to sign up for that, that will be covering any errors that you may go through with creating the pattern. And I also want you guys to, you know, give it a try. That way, while we are doing the classes, I'm able to answer any questions that you may have. Um, Sometimes the issue is that I am 10 years into knitting, so things that I may fly through because I think that, you may know or have a grasp of may not be true because I'm so far removed from being a very beginner knitter. So I really need the questions or any insights or stopping me so that I could make sure that you guys are getting the information fully and properly. I don't want to gloss over anything because once we go to the other class, I only have maybe a couple minutes to, try to go over some of the things before we get into the new stuff. It's not a lot of time, like 30 minutes actually really fly by. So if you can maybe, go and try these things out, have your questions. If you're comfortable and you want to ask a question specifically on your project, you can just raise your hand and, let me see what's going on your video. That way I could really, really answer anything that you guys need. Um, let's get back into this. And as you can see, I am using a circular needle to do this project. And that's just my preference. The straight needles are just too cumbersome for me. They are beautiful when you are knitting, but if you want something that works and does the job really efficiently, I like to go with the circulars. And we are going to get to the point where we're going to make a hat. So this having circulars will make your life just a lot easier. So this is the garter stitch. And as you can see, remember I told you kind of looks like just rows of pearls, both the front and the back. So it doesn't really have a wrong side per se. And yeah, so I'm going to leave the last couple minutes to answer any questions that you guys have. If you want to leave it in the chat, if you feel comfortable and want to speak it through your mic, either one is good. I need to figure out some other stuff for the next class. We are going to do casting off and just kind of doing proper finishing for whatever project that you do, which includes something called blocking. There's also, if you're having any issues with figuring out how much to cast on, the reason why I told you guys to make a swatch is even though we are using the same yarn and the same needle, we are not going to have the same amount of stitches because what's called tension, I may knit a little bit tighter than you or looser than you. So even though I knit something and I may say to you, okay, you need to cast on maybe 9 or so stitches, you may not get the same fabric as me because we have different tensions. So that's why I recommend that you guys do a swatch, figure it out from there, and then move forward. If you maybe have any questions as to, how long should I make the scarf? Should I, if I'm trying to do a circular one, how much, should I cast on for that? I could help you. You guys could also email me. Hold on. 1 second. How long should we make the head warmer for the next class so we're ready for finishing? Okay, so depends on who you're making the head warmer for. If you're making it for yourself, let me refer back to the charts. I don't give you the wrong information. But if you're making it for an adult woman, you want it to be between 21 and 23 inches. For a male, you want it to be 22 to 24 inches, and it has different um, circumferences for infant as well. So I would check out the chart that I placed in the chat from Yarn Council. If you have any questions after checking that out, go ahead and email me. I'm going to put my email here for you guys. So you can email me with other questions. I try to get back to you guys as soon as possible. Um, but yeah, so if we don't have any other questions, yeah, so finish it until that length. And then when you come back to class, if you can finish it to that length and you're having issues with maybe some stitches or you're dropping stitches and you want to fix those, we're going to address those in that class as well. So you don't necessarily need to get to the ending point of the project, but you need to kind of start it to figure out, okay, what do I need to troubleshoot? And we're going to work on that in the following class. And then we will end it on the class after that. So, all right. So if we don't have any questions, that's going to be it for this class. Thank you guys so much for joining me again. This class, usually I get the video a little bit late, so it'll be maybe a couple days before the next class that I'm able to upload this class video. The previous class video I'm going to try to get up today, but I hope you guys are having a wonderful week so far. Thank you for joining me again, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. You're welcome, Jean.